Hello and welcome to this week's Webio podcast. Today, I am fortunate enough to be joined by Patricia Bear, who is the Director of Conversion Rate Optimization at Night Market. So Night Market, they help businesses really understand their conversion path in order to optimize that conversion path so they can drive more sales, more revenue from their website and the entire customer experience. It's really, really great to have you on the podcast today, Patricia.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you. No, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Can I get you to start off by doing a better intro than I did about your role at Night Market? And more importantly, I think how you ended up with a career in conversion rate optimization.
Yeah, definitely. Although you did a fabulous job. Yeah, happy to supply a little bit more information. So yes, I do work at Night Market, which is part of the Horizon Media family. Very large agency in the US. And what is neat about Night Market, though, is that we're not exclusively media focused. As you mentioned, our charter, our call to action is optimizing the modern path to purchase. So all of our support pillars are centered around that, and that is commerce media, but also commerce experience, which is where I sit, and as well as that digital transformation. And we're very focused on driving demand, right? Optimizing media outcomes, as you said, but we've got very bespoke services that can be tailored to, whatever our clients need. So if you're in the D2C spaces, retail, marketplaces, social commerce, we're for you.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, those organizations, while they are maximizing their advertising budget and doing what they can to ensure that is spent in the right place to drive the right traffic, a big part of that will be what happens once those buyers get there now, because none of us want to be filling a leaky bucket, do we?
No, not at all. And the space is changing dramatically so quickly, right? As you mentioned, it kind of obliquely, the path to digital experience is very different now. Media acquisition is very different now. The ecosystem is really different. So keeping up with that and the entire chain is a changing game. And so we're really interested in kind of attacking that soup to nuts. So that's kind of what we do. And within commerce experience, we have my team, CRO, as well as, commerce experience includes our CX team, and we attend to things like, persona mapping, journey mapping, all that good stuff. But for me, myself, conversion rate optimization is something that I've been doing for about 15 years now, a little bit longer. And prior to, I was in the B2B space. And so what unifies throughout all of those experiences is just this attraction that I had to the clarity, the rigor, the accountability of CRO. I was really drawn to the idea that marketers could take advantage of the scientific method, and break down problems in a way and with very great clarity elucidate an answer. So I just think that's a really powerful thing. And so I was lucky enough to be coming into my own as kind of a business practitioner at the same time as CRO was. And so I still had choices to make with regards to where I wanted to go, and, saw this kind of White Castle on the hill and never looked back. I've been doing it ever since I became aware of it, really.
Yeah, and like you say, it's only going to continue to grow and evolve, which is probably a great joy to you because your career will continue to grow and evolve with the space as well. It's not, it's never slowing down, is it? It's, the way that people buy is constantly evolving and changing.
Yeah, no, it's really cool to be in this space right now, to see it evolving, to see it getting more sophisticated, to see it getting more strategic, to see the practitioners understand that there is more than the short-term sale. And that's critical, right? Conversion rate optimization is critical to business success. Best practices change around you, so you need to evolve your site to keep up with that. But also understanding how CRO can really support strategic business decisions, right? Price models, kind of front door testing new experiences. It's just a really fascinating time to be here and to
Yeah.
see where it's getting applied. Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with you. The measurability and the rigor around it is part of what makes it exciting, and also part of what excites me about marketing as much as
Yeah.
anything. So, you touched on earlier about the fact that you were in a B2B role prior to moving into the agency space, and I know, thinking about our listeners to the podcast, while they love to hear about that forward-thinking agency space, they will be particularly interested about your B2B experience. And from our conversation, my understanding is that you had a role, a very significant role at B2B organization Red Hat, where you pioneered CRO as optimization program manager for over 7 years. So kind of coming in when there wasn't really any kind of CRO optimization strategy in place, building that, but then running it for the next 7 years. So can you tell us about how that role came about? Because it sounds like a bit of a dream.
It truly was. I mentioned earlier that the timing had something to do with it, right? And it truly did. CRO was hitting an inflection point at the same time that I was hitting an inflection point of my own. And I would say in parallel, Red Hat was also hitting an inflection point, right? It was transitioning to an enterprise player. And it was clear as I was joining that marketing was establishing its strategies for supporting that moment, right? So making the transition to digital, et cetera, et cetera. And so a big part of that was, an establishment of a long-term roadmap. Optimization and personalization were a big part of that. And so coming into the space, being that it was a bit newer, it was kind of a white field, or green field rather, had some room to play, but then also had this kind of support given that it was on the roadmap. So it was a really exciting time. I would have to say Kismet was a part of that for sure. Let me see, what can I say beyond that, except that it was a really exciting moment in my career, and that there was a lot of change happening, and to be able to be a part of that to help build it was fantastic.
And when they were thinking about the optimization side of things, obviously you said, you touched on the fact that they were shifting to have an enterprise focus. So was the optimization program always about demand gen and marketing, or was actually product the key driver for Red Hat?
Sure. Well, initially, demand gen was the sole focus, right? It wasn't until PLG hit its own inflection point a couple of years later that strategies grew to encompass, those initiatives as well. But at the onset, it was all about marketing support for marketing source lead. So that was our focus, but it was very cool to see that evolve once again, right? As we came more into the SaaS space, the strategies and the thought processes there, the productization of CRO, it was very cool to be able to toggle between those two mindsets as well.
Yeah. And so going back to then having demand gen and marketing as the key focus, what were the initial objectives were you working towards, and were they defined when you got there? It was like, right, Patricia, we need to increase conversion or revenue from demand gen by 25% over the next 2 years, or was it your responsibility to define them?
Yeah, it was truly mine because, as I mentioned, there was no optimization practice at scale there when I got there, and Red Hat was undergoing its own transformation and centralization, right? So it was completely greenfield. And sure, top line objectives were very clearly articulated, but the different divisions and how they were here to support with their own OKRs, KPIs, that was variable. So there was, as with any good program, right, a pretty concerted effort in the beginning to understand what are the objectives, how do we succeed, right? Being able to demonstrably support those objectives being key. And so, yeah, having to understand how does our marketing org break down, right? Those things become critical. What are the different divisions and what are their different OKRs and KPIs, as I mentioned before, and how do we support them? How do they stack and rank against each other? And then within all that, how do we unify all those needs within one site architecture? Because we have to maintain a unified presence. We have to observe, right, digital's own objectives with regard to on-site best practice, US best practice, and all that. So it was a very matrixed, very layered kind of exercise of developing.
And this is interesting because I think about some of our clients and they're in similar situations. I've got two questions. One, when you talk about the different divisions or like the org, are you thinking about like different product teams? So each of those teams has their own product that they want to get in front of that audience that's going to the website, and they've got their own goals and objectives relating to that, but you can't help all of them all together, all at the same time. You've got to make choices about where you start first. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, essentially. You've got different product teams, you've got different go-to-market teams, each with its own desire to have an imprint on the site. And then you also have to respect that the central digital marketing team has to maintain brand adherence. There's always that push and pull struggle of, I'm chartered with demand gen. I want to get stuff done. Do I go to the do I go to the on-site experience within the core domain, or do I go off and build microsites or custom landing pages, et cetera, et cetera? And so, Central is always trying to bring the family back in, and optimization, personalization, especially, can be a really good tool for bringing those groups together, right, into a more happy marriage. Yeah, how do you get all that done with one team, with one limited set of resources? And that becomes an exercise really in kind of development best practice, right? And that was where it was really nice to be in a B2B SaaS setting, because that's just part of the fabric of how everybody works, everybody understands it, everybody respects it. So that was kind of a leg up in the whole process of having to, once you build a backlog, once you get the attention, once you get the buy-in, getting people to understand that there is kind of a stack and rank process and a planning process, a development process, and all these things take time. And we all have to participate in the road mapping so that we can all get what we need. All those things were already kind of understood, and that was eminently helpful.
So you did, you did commit to then focusing on the core website as opposed to, I just want to get stuff done, I'm going to go and create some landing pages, and or did you do a little bit of both to get some quick wins?
Well, we would try to meet people where they were, right? And if people have budget and they've already made some decisions, then you at least want to kind of facilitate the entree back into the core domain with experience continuity, and through good experiences and partnership in those efforts, maybe you can bring somebody closer back in. But yeah, I was part of Central, so of course we're always trying to, in that kind of space, keep things clean and crisp and part of the core ecosystem, right? Where you built out all the tracking that you like so much and is so useful for understanding how the demand gen actually worked and all that jazz.
So did you take, so then thinking about obviously the fact that you might have different product teams with different objectives, first of all, was it easy to get benchmark data from them so you understood where they were? And then second of all, did you get all of the insight you needed to make decisions about where to focus first without their input? So you could look at it holistically and go, well, actually, based on the business objectives and where's going to drive the most revenue, I'm going to focus on this particular set of products to start with. Did you find you were able to make those decisions easily?
I wouldn't say easily, but Red Hat was a data-rich organization, and so there was a really good foundation for being able to assess, right, from a predicted, revenue impact, eyeball impact, all that kind of stuff, where we would get the most yield.
Right.
So it
Yeah.
was possible. As you said, there's always the layer of business objective and business prioritization that can influence all of that. But it's a pretty data-driven org. So, in a lot of respects, that made the game easier. And it was also a very collaborative org. So everybody was, they're really good partners to each other and understanding of, prioritization and able to celebrate shared successes. So that was also really nice to be in that kind of environment.
Yeah, perfect. And I guess following on from that question then, what challenges did you have to navigate when you were working with multiple stakeholders across all of those divisions? How I'm guessing they would get excited, but then getting excited about that new program and actually getting the buy-in to start off is a different story. So how did you do that?
Yeah, gosh, so much there. Yeah, it's the evolution, right? Initially, it's you need to get people to the party, and then it becomes the issue of managing everybody at the party and making sure that they're okay, they have a drink, enough
That's a
time.
good analogy. I like that. Yeah.
So they don't leave. But yeah, initially it was a lot of BD, right? In order to succeed, you need to be able to share your vision outward. You can't do it on your own. So what does that mean? It means a lot of change management, explicitly seeking that buy-in, explicitly seeking partnership, a lot of education to front door that, because if people don't understand what your vision is, how you do this work and why you want to do it in the first place, why you want to make a change, you're going to get nothing but that tacit, like, sure, okay, but lack of participation, right? So going out and making those efforts, finding those initial willing folks to take a step with you so that you can develop a use case and then promote it and build some FOMO. It's that classic play, right? You have to find your change agents and you have to find them at all levels.
Yeah. That's really powerful, because I think that's the situation that so many of our customers are in, is, they understand there is absolutely the need to focus on optimizing that journey. They see all the benefits to it, but it's like, okay, well, I can create a strong business case, but how do I sell that to all the different members of my audience? And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like, you've got to find a couple of just good success stories that you can share, so you get everyone going, I want a piece of that. And then it kind of snowballs from there. And I think sometimes we as marketers want to do all of what we want to do straight away, and we have to realize that there is no way that we're going to get to run that whole program unless we demonstrate some quick wins, I guess.
Yeah, and to build on that, I do remember initially, when I was getting into the space, I think some of the literature did a disservice to CRO, right? Because it was all about the quick win and change the button color, right? And sometimes sometimes that can yield, but it kind of obfuscated that the process is a process. There is work entailed. You probably will need a developer at some point. So it's been good to see the story change away from look at how quick and easy this is to look at how substantial the yield is here. Look at how powerful and critical this is to the ongoing evolution of your digital presence. I think that is a better message to carry forward. And it also ties back into kind of some of the points that you were making implicitly earlier, which is that you really need to be strategic. You really need to be strategic about who you approach in terms of finding that change agent, right? Where is the yield going to happen? where are we going to capture the interest of the greater org so that we can scale this up? That's where you need to start,
Yeah.
not the button color, the thing that will actually yield an outcome that you can brag about.
Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. I definitely used the wrong terminology in terms of quick win, because it might be quick in terms of once implemented, you're able to measure results, but all of the weeks and months and hours of effort that have gone into getting to that point, is not quick at all. And if you don't spend the time doing that properly, your quick win will just become a quick fail, because it has to be strategic, it has to be insight based. Like, I totally get that. So definitely the wrong language there.
And I don't mean to dismiss that either, because sometimes, you do find that magic, that bit of magic. Gosh, what is the Bing example of opening, I think, opening a search result in a second tab yielded, 4 million incremental in a quarter. So sometimes you can land on those things.
Yeah.
But so long as it's within the rails of what is strategically important to the org, right? It can be a quick win. It just has to be in that zone. That is the focus and the concern.
Yeah, and it's how you present it back. So can you talk us through? I mean, I'm going to say experiment, but I realised that that might not have been where you started. But I know that that's where our customers are particularly interested in hearing more about. Like, what was the insight process? How did you gather that? Where did you gather that? How did you then translate that insight into like strategic ideas, always tying that into the business goals, and then coming up with your first hypothesis? How long did that take?
So when it came to Red Hat and kind of the initial phases of that program there, we had which is very typical, right? A pretty lightweight, initial POCs, but kind of in keeping with the theme that we just charted earlier, one of the projects that we did initially was as simple as could be, right? On the contact page.
Okay.
Moving the form above the fold.
I mean, oh my goodness, right. Okay,
What could that be? Yeah. But wouldn't you know it? The results were pretty impressive. And therefore we were able to, and then you can actually quantify the value, once again, thinking about things strategically, not necessarily in terms of like the weight of the project, but with a contact form, with a lead gen form, you can actually calculate the value of that input. So then you can articulate in a dollar sense what that particular project, which was lightweight, which did not take a lot of time, yielded. And so that's the kind of conversation you want to have with your internal stakeholders, right?
Yeah, makes sense. And what technology choices did you have to make? Did you have to cut stuff, add stuff? How did you avoid that horrible bloat of lots of stuff that you're not using?
So with that particular program, the choice was fairly easy because we had gone into the Adobe Suite.
Okay.
And we had kind of gone full in on that. But we had not kind of adopted the whole stack that's available today. So I didn't have to make any technology choices at that point in time. Have had to since, and we can talk about that through that lens. But I will say it was nice to work with a platform because when you have the kind of integrated analytics into the testing platform and into the kind of the audience building platform, all of that was seamless, and that it really did kind of propel some growth and capability enhancement in a seamless way. So that was also really nice.
But you must have had to have some really good buy-in from like development and engineering to kind of make that happen. Because I mean, I agree, like that the platform itself and the output is amazing, but it needs technical expertise.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is definitely a solution. It's an enterprise grade solution. Yeah. And, when you're small, medium, probably your selection criteria are going to be a little bit different, right? And there are more lightweight tools out there to be sure. And then the new breed of tools that are coming out that are like more easily integrated across client and server side are something that we didn't have to contend with as
Yeah,
much in the beginning anyway. But now we'll be making some of the same choices. I'm not sure.
yeah,
Right. So yeah, the trade-off conversation, that's a difficult phase in the whole program, and particularly for any kind of optimization platform, because yeah, you do have to contend with the developer concern that these laymen are going to get out and they're gonna put something out there that's going to kill the site. And
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so again, that comes into change management efforts, finding
Mm,
your partnerships,
yeah,
yeah, getting your participation from a change agent on that side who can advocate for, and also help ensure that you're taking care of
yeah.
all the security practices that you need to with rigor in mind. But
I feel
yeah.
like you could run a whole training session for um, B2B CMOs looking to implement, conversion rate optimization and how to get it embedded in their organization with all the experience that you've been through. And I think you've been, you know, really fortunate, and obviously it's your talent that's brought you there, that you've been through that experience, because so many individuals that we talk to are just starting out on that. So yeah, it's fascinating to hear. I mean, did it take you a long time before you got to your first success? Are we talking 6 months, 3 months, 12 months? Like when you could first go to the wider org and say, this is what we've done, this has delivered great success, and if you want to do some of this, then this is what. Yeah, when did you get to that point?
Yeah, well, I think we struck a bit of luck with my efforts, with our efforts, in that contact form project that I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
That was in month three,
Yeah,
I want
yeah.
to say. And I kind of skipped over the data part of things when you asked that question. So apologies there. And to go back to that, I think we did our research, right? We spent a little time and we just logically assessed where we could find success, and then we used the tools that we had on hand, right? So heat map tools, web analytics, and then had a little conversation with our internal stakeholders to understand, what would sway them. So a little bit of preparation yielded, I think, success
Mm.
earlier on, and that was incredibly helpful because in the beginning stages, time is of the essence. Like every movement is critical. It's an inflection point of its own. So we were really lucky there. But we probably wasn't until a year or two later that we were really approaching regional teams, right? We had established enough process, enough rigor, enough scale that we were operating kind of like a COE, right? So we had
Yeah.
our program, and now as a central program, we're approaching other sites and asking them to come into the umbrella under a unified instance. And let's aggregate all our results, let's aggregate our process, all that good stuff. So it took a lot of time from that first success to scale. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, going back to the point you made about like moving the form above the fold. I mean, obviously, as an experienced practitioner, you would probably have looked at that and gone, that could be, a real opportunity. And as you said, you talked to internal stakeholders and you did surveys. I mean, how much validation did you do? Because you must have known as a practitioner, like, I think, like, I had a feel about this one.
Yeah. Of course I did, right? When you look at that, it's yeah, from day one you're like, well, that's the guy right there. But you still go through the process because the process is critical. The credibility of the program rests on clearly articulated rationale, right? We're not operating on hunches. That's not what this is about. So even though I had a feeling, we needed to demonstrate a process wherein we were doing all the due diligence necessary to ensure that what we were targeting was going to be high likelihood of success, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how you want to
Yeah.
work.
And it paves the way for that repeatable process, because you're
Yeah.
not going to have lots and lots of those ones that you're like, oh, that.
Yeah.
So to start with that, okay, we're going to do it right, and then that's a success, is great, isn't it? Because that just makes the next phase easier. People understand, okay, we've got to put the work in at the beginning to validate this as part of that ideation process. Then we can go ahead, and if we do that work, we're more likely to get a success than not. So yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
I can get why you would have gone through that, and what a great outcome to have. So thinking about us, I would say potentially like B2C digital marketers are probably a little more advanced than their B2B counterparts in terms of CRO, but we are all recognizing that we can't afford to just keep spending on advertising without focusing on user experience and getting relevant content to those buyers as soon as possible when they hit the site, to drive conversion, making the journey as frictionless as possible. What skills do we need to develop as marketers to help us undertake a CRO program, and how should we develop them ourselves as, say, like a CMO, and then how would we help the team develop those as well, and where would we get them?
I love that question. I love that question because, it's something that you kind of have to grapple with internally and externally as you're starting a program, right? I think what's important to remember is that at the beginning stages, particularly, it's a mindset more than anything else, right? So understanding that CRO is kind of based in the scientific method. It's about research, experimentation, validation. And so at the outset, just finding somebody or developing that within yourself, that particular mindset, recalling what we were just talking about, being very deliberate, being very rational in your approach, understanding what's strategically important, understanding that data can help you support the prioritization of things that you can do to support that strategy, right? Being strategic in the kinds of research that you do in order to validate your process. All those things are exercises that anybody can do. And so I would encourage anybody to think first in mindset, find that person, if it's not you, who has that kind of attraction to exactitude, a little bit of that. And then, of course, as you develop the program, you are going to have to start looking at hard skills. At first, you can use the WYSIWYG, right? And that's all well and good. Simple tests can absolutely be effective. Copy tests can absolutely be highly effective. But at a certain point in time, you're probably going to want a technical partner.
Yeah.
So you can, start doing some of the, more full suite experience optimization exercises that you might want to get into.
Yeah, sure. Because I think that's a fair point, because if you do really start to get some wins, you need to embed those and then move on from there. It can't just be all done through your MarTech. And also, like, I think if you don't have those skills, and obviously we talk about night marketing coming full circle, getting an agency or an outside expert to kind of give you a springboard to success would also probably help as part of that journey. And then you could educate yourself during that point and be really open and honest with the agency and say, look, we want to do CRO ourselves, but for the first 12 months, we need a partner. So, yeah, can you help us with that in mind?
100%. And that's what we are here to do, right? It is still a newer skill set. It's still a newer
Yeah,
discipline within marketing. So yeah, bring somebody in who has gone through all of the roughage and can give
yeah.
you the steps that you need to follow so that you can bring it inside. An absolutely valid way to go forward and to probably skip you through some of the pains that I went
Yeah,
through.
well, stop. Like, you're about to make a big mistake. Look, we're going to take lots of
Yeah.
time and effort to not do that. Yeah, brilliant. Oh, well, thank you, Patricia. Absolutely fascinating to chat to you, and some really, really great insight for our listeners. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks, Kirsten. It was really nice to be here. I appreciate you having me.